Good evening, Tigard. Thanks for spending another Thursday evening with me. We've received several questions ahead of time, and if you haven't submitted your question or comment, I'll give you a few minutes to do so while I provide you a couple updates. So one update, and I've heard some feedback from the community that is frustrated a little bit with what I'm about to share, and that is that the Main Street, Green Street improvements for the second part of downtown Tigard is delayed. So the start date was originally scheduled for early February. Excuse me, and it's been delayed due to supply chain shortages. And the city staff are still working on a new start date, so that's yet to be determined. But pipe materials specifically that are needed for the storm system improvements are not going to be available for several months, and those have to be put in the ground before we do a bunch of the rest of it. So the contractor and the city are assessing the impacts of the delay, how to phase the project, and what the impacts will be to the schedule. And once an updated schedule is available, we will share it with downtown businesses and with the community at large. So if you have questions or comments, I know a number of downtown business owners are frustrated with that and have communicated about it. And, they're unfortunately, with things like availability of pipe right now, that's not something we can just instantly fix within the city. So the second heads up I want to give you is about the mobile museum that landed in the library's backyard. So the mobile museum's new exhibit, Displace, shines light on the connections between Hawaii, the Pacific Northwest, and communities that continue to flow between these two regions. And this exhibition is created by the Five Oaks Museum and guest curators. It will be on display in the library's backyard from now till March 31st. All right, we are going to go to your questions. So this is the first one. Looks like a long one, so try to stay with me here. So Timothy's asking or stating, I'm concerned about the increasing number of graffiti tagging on city street signs, private business signs, utility boxes, and so on. There's a prolific tagger marking political anti-police messages and hoping the city can come up with a game plan on how to keep on top of it. Separately, there's a lot of tagging at TriMet stops on Durham, on Hall, and ODOT property, freeway signs on 217 in Tigard, 99W, Beef Bend sign, and when it's reported to those agencies numerous times, they never clean it up. Perhaps requests coming from the mayor will carry more urgency. That is certainly possible, but disturbing because that's not how we operate as a city. But I will have our staff certainly take this. Carol, if you can take this as an action, I think that there's a number of things that we can do. One is that's the first time I recently have heard from someone that there's a recognition that there's maybe one person and the way that was stated, a prolific tagger who may be doing much of the tagging or graffiti. And that would suggest to me that may require some additional police follow-up and investigation to try to stop that. Oftentimes it's sort of more random and maybe less organized than that, and so that can be trickier, I would say. But I think there's some police follow-up there, and then certainly feedback to Public Works. I know they already got that feedback, particularly on the Fano Creek Trail, because I just gave them that feedback after talking with another group of citizens, including some Cub Scouts and Boy Scouts. And I had that conversation a couple weeks ago, and we followed up on that. So we'll give that feedback to both Public Works, and it sounds like we need to give it to ODOT as well in the county. So we'll get that to them. And sure, we'll put it under my name. We'll see if that has a different impact. If it does, I don't like that, but I do what I can to help our community. And let's see, boundaries are roughly from 99W down to Durham. Is this still about the tagging?
Still about the graffiti. Yep.
I see. So Carol, there's a bunch of detail here. They also, the person that submitted this acknowledged it's not Portland bad by any means, but it's becoming more of a common sight in Tigard. So we will certainly do what we can, and I appreciate the fact that there was a distinction made about that, or at least an indication it's not risen to the level that it has in Portland. Let's see, the next question. Is there a limit of cats, dogs, or chickens in Tigard? This is an interesting question on a number of fronts. The first thing I'll share about, let's talk about chickens to begin with, or urban livestock, which cats and dogs are not urban agriculture, urban livestock. So we'll separate chickens from cats and dogs to start with. So I don't know exactly what year it was, but it probably was in 2015 or 2016 that we had, as a city council, we'd had a number of individuals, particularly young citizens of Tigard and community members, come to the city council and really advocate for being able to have 1 or 2 chickens, just like some basic chicken action in their backyard. And if you think back to what was going on in Portland then, that was kind of becoming, in the Portland metro area, that was becoming a more popular thing. And so the council had discussions with staff at a public meeting about what we could do about that. And really what needed to happen is Tigard had a code that really made it so you mostly couldn't have, I would say, you really couldn't have chickens on most lots in Tigard because they required a huge setback. Most people didn't even have lots that were big enough to have that setback. And so for the most part, it was just not even allowed. What we asked staff was, first of all, they told us that they thought that the whole code needed to be rewritten because it was pretty out of date and no longer reflective of what we do and the way we live now as community members. And so that was one piece of feedback, but they also said, we can't do that quickly. And do you want this to be ahead of these other things? And the council said no. So that is now on it's on a work plan to be done, or the work started in March of this year. So that's sort of the actually, I guess I left an important piece out of this. What the council said to the staff at the time was, let's not enforce the code now. That was what staff recommended. So we've not been enforcing the specific part of the code about chickens. So that, I think, covers chickens. The code says one thing, we've said not to enforce it, and it needs to be, the whole section of the code needs to be reworked. Cats and dogs are a whole different animal. That's funny. I cracked myself up there. Hadn't even thought of that. Cats and dogs are a different situation. So with cats and dogs, because they're domestic animals, the codes that would apply there are really around noise and odor. I don't think there's, unless I'm wrong, which happens all the time, but I don't think there's a limit on you can only have 3 dogs or 2 cats or anything like that. It would be all based on sort of the nuisance ordinances, so to speak. Staff, that are here, anybody know anything different or more specific than that? Okay. Let's see. The next question is, quote, affordable housing, a fancy way of saying low income. So I'm gonna separate these terms a bit and maybe talk about them a little bit more. Affordable housing is a term that is meant to, and there's actually multiple ways of referring to housing that is more affordable. Some you'll hear refer to it as workforce housing, so housing that someone that's making above minimum wage could be able to afford. We have some new affordable housing, or new workforce housing, that went in on Hunsaker Street recently on the Fields property. And that's sort of one way of talking about housing that's more affordable. Generally speaking, when a affordable housing developer or an organization that owns affordable housing, typically a nonprofit organization, when they're talking about affordable housing, they usually are tying it to housing that is affordable to a certain percentile of median income. And both 60% of median area income and 30% are generally what are referred to. The 30% of median area income is considered sort of deeply affordable housing. So things that most people, the people that in our community are most challenged in affording housing, that they can afford. And so there are some projects that are like that, that are built to have that kind of affordability. The Red Rock Creek Commons is a Community Partners for Affordable Housing project on 68th. That is an example of that type of housing. But other than, I guess I wouldn't link it directly to saying low income, because to be honest, there are many people who are getting paid, I would say quite a bit over, for example, minimum wage, people that are in the, $25 an hour range who are having trouble affording housing. And I don't equate someone that is making close to double minimum wage right now as sort of saying they're low income. So I don't think there's other than saying that people that generally need deeply affordable housing have lower income, that would be the tie I would make there. I hope that's a reasonable explanation. And if you have other comments or questions, please put those in the chat. Justin asks, what is Tigard doing to control the homeless situation that is plaguing the downtown area? I've been a business owner for 10 years in the area, and the problem has progressively gotten worse. So Justin, I would ask you to put, if we don't already have it, put your contact information into a message to the city on whatever social media platform you are using to put your question in. We have a lot going on around both houseless individuals and the homeless challenges that we have as a community. We've covered those quite a bit in these sessions, and I guess I'm a little hesitant to go like really deep on that. We've got just a lot going on, and we can have staff follow up and provide you with a lot of detail about what we're doing. And I think what we've generally heard since August, when the council really, frankly, pushed city staff to take immediate and decisive action, we've seen an improvement. It's not completely better, but I was getting phone calls, really concerning phone calls from downtown business owners multiple times a week from, their staff showing up more than once a week, finding human feces in their doorways and things like that. We're not seeing that kind of impact right now. I'm not aware of, over the summer, again, we had some very concerning, what I would call behavioral incidents in downtown Tigard with houseless individuals. And we've not seen those at the same rate and level that we've seen. So I think we feel like we've made some short-term progress, but that doesn't solve the bigger picture problem, which is getting people resources and getting them connected. And we are doing that. We're doing that one by one. We just had our community services officer in the police department, who's been taking the lead on this in the last year, Brandon Peterson. We had an individual that he's been in contact with off and on for years, who finally in the last couple weeks accepted a referral into some resources to get them connected and get them into housing. And that's really exciting, but it also demonstrates how hard this work can be and how repetitive we are and our teammates have to be to get people connected and willing to accept help and resources. There's also a bunch of other things we're trying to do with Just Compassion. Simple stuff like figuring out what certain barriers are. IDs, like having identification, government identification right now is a big barrier. A couple of years ago, we learned that a major barrier was just not being able to receive mail. And so we're I think, actively trying to figure out how to deal with the identification issue. I know one of our city councilors suggested we ask the DMV to just come and issue identifications on site where it was easier for houseless individuals to get to. That all just came up in the last week, so I haven't heard what the result of that is, but those are the kinds of things that we're trying to do to help get people the assistance that they, in many cases, they have already earned and deserve, and they just either don't know how to access them, they don't know that they're available to them, etc. All right, Lander asks, is it possible to sweep bike paths on Bonita and Hall? I got a flat tire there, very unsafe. So sweeping, was the flat tire, I guess I'm curious, like, was that from a nail or a sharp object? Or I guess when I think sweeping bike paths, I'm thinking like needles and things like that. And that certainly could be a safety issue, especially in the rain. But Lander, could you provide a little more info about that? And then we can make sure, the staff that are here can make sure that gets to our Public Works and Parks and Recreation team.
Yeah,
all right.
Mr. Mayor, he just said it was debris in general.
Debris in general, okay.
Yeah.
So, Carol, can we get that back to Public Works and particularly to Parks and Rec folks? Okay, Susan is asking, can you do anything to add more pickleball courts? They're not nearly enough. So, Susan, I'm guessing you're referring to Summer Lake Park, but maybe others. I've actually played pickleball a couple times at Summer Lake. I got invited by the group there, and I was I'll just say I was better than they were expecting. They told me to chill out a little. I was using a little too much arm like it was tennis, but I have heard this feedback from a couple different individuals, and I know that the Parks and Recreation team is actively evaluating where there may be more options for pickleball courts, but frankly, we want things that are flexible too, because while pickleball is sort of desired right now, things do change. So let's see. We've got something coming in from...
Justin asked, I'm afraid police are patrolling houses less in Tigard instead of actually fighting crime.
I'm afraid police in Tigard are patrolling houses?
Yes, less than actually fighting crime.
Okay. So Justin, it sounds like I would actually invite you to, I'd love to hear more about that, and I think so would the police chief. I would ask you to connect with me directly. My personal cell phone number is 503-810-0269. Again, 503-810-0269. Why don't you send me a text or give me a phone call, and we'll sit down and chat. I want to learn more about your perspective about that, and then we can either share it with Chief McAlpine or get her engaged as well. But I think that'd be a longer discussion and something that's probably not going to work well on the social media chat. Jane is asking, is Steve Street Park being developed soon? Yes, that's the short answer to that. I was actually out with a couple, I think on January 15th, if that was a Saturday, I think it was. I was out with doing a tour with our Parks and Recreation team, looking at sort of the major projects that we have going on. And Steve Street Park is one that is imminently ready to be developed to help us fulfill our mission. And one of our major values and goals there is to have everyone within a 10-minute walk of a high-quality park in Tigard. And where Steve Street Park is critical for that, because the area in Tigard around Metzger and then just south and east of that is an area that is relatively unparked. So Steve Street Park is one key to that. And so is... I'm forgetting the name of the park. That's the new park property. Maybe it's Bagan.
Bagan, yep.
Bagan Park, off of Greenberg, as you're heading towards Washington Square. Those two parks are really critical to helping fill those gaps in the 10-minute walk. And they're also, and this is a key part as we're trying to be a more inclusive community, is that those are also areas of the city that have more lower income and people of color living in them. And so having and developing and filling park holes, or park gaps, I should say, in our park system in those areas is really important if we're going to deliver on our mission and values.
Mr. Mayor, follow up on Justin's comment, and he appreciates you being available, and we'll take you up on giving him a call. He was actually, his question was, I'm afraid police are patrolling the homeless in Tigard instead of actually fighting crime.
Oh.
A little bit of clarification.
Patrolling the homeless. Okay. That is we can try to talk about that now. So, that's a really interesting question and observation. We are trying, and our police department is trying not to. The police are supposed to be involved in criminal activity, and much of what's happening with houseless individuals is really not criminal, but some of it is, and that's a problem. And then, there's a bunch of sort of community, behavioral, and societal issues that happen that we expect the police to respond to because there's no one else to do it. I think that's a more widespread problem just in the United States. It's certainly reflected in Tigard and in the Portland metro area. And while we call and expect police to respond when someone calls, when they're doing some of that kind of work, then they're not out doing other things. But what I would say is that the broad majority of our houseless outreach, et cetera, is being done by a non-sworn member of the police department. So I was mentioning Brandon Peterson, the community services officer. We actually have a couple police officers that are pretty skilled in helping houseless individuals and get them connected. But Brandon is the primary person assigned right now. And then we're also trying to be more proactive and use some small parts of the funding we got from the federal government to try as part of the American Rescue Plan to try to address the houseless challenges in Tigard on a short-term basis. Those are not going to be necessarily permanently funded positions, and we don't have the funding to do that from without using the federal money. But it's an important thing to try to get some of that work out of our police department. That's just not where most of it belongs. And as you point out, that's not where we want our police officers focusing their time unless there's true criminal activity. So, okay. Jerome is asking, is Tigard considering a bike pedestrian bridge over Route 217? Great question. Particularly important because our two town centers in the Tigard Triangle and downtown Tigard are very hard to get between right now. What Tigard is considering, or not just considering, but what we've been advocating for, is if the Southwest Corridor light rail project moves forward and gets funding, we want to make sure that there's bike and pedestrian connections and bike and pedestrian facilities on that bridge. And there's been, I would say and it really just comes down to money. TriMet has basically said, well, we're okay with that as long as you guys pay for all of it or figure out where to get the money, because we're not going to have the money. That's a challenge, of course, for us. Perhaps some of the federal funding now that is specifically targeted towards reconnecting communities that have been separated by freeways and other types of things, that may be an opportunity there. So that's what we're looking at right now that I know of. That's a long-term thing and would only happen if the Southwest Corridor gets funded and is moving forward. Let's see, Deborah, Happy New Year. Awesome. Happy New Year to you as well. And then is thanking us for hosting these chats. So thank you. Let's see. Carlin is excited about the splash pad at Universal Plaza And will it be completed by the summer? I'm assuming you're meaning this summer. And I don't think that's probably going to happen. I don't think that's realistic and not what's planned. But I bet it will happen before a summer of some sort. I mean, to give you a real answer, I think it's probably a couple years off, unfortunately. Let's see, we got a comment or a question coming in
The
from...
next comment was from Marilyn. She said she likes the lights that are on the trees downtown, and would love to see those stay up year round.
So Marilyn, thank you for that feedback, and I will just cover, we actually had some information about that topic last month, and I will just share with you what we shared last month. And we're going to keep the lights up from approximately, well, during most of daylight savings time, so from November-ish to March-ish. And the reason it's not going to be longer is because during the times that the trees are more active in their growth cycle, it's actually damaging and a problem to the trees. So they won't be up year-round, but I think we can all agree that the most important times for them to be up would be when it's darker earlier and during the holidays, and when we're trying to draw people into downtown when it's dark. And so hopefully that November to March timeframe will meet the needs and still allow the trees to survive and thrive. So what else do we have, Kent?
We're caught up from now. You might want to mention the potential for Tigard Cares and the support for businesses that council's discussing.
Yeah, so our communications team here is suggesting I make sure that everybody knows that the Tigard Cares program is still available to help residents, potentially to help. I think we did the latest round of funding for nonprofits, but I think if there was a need, we'd want to hear about that as well, that we may not know about. So residents can get relief on their utility bills and other support, and we can help make that happen. And then the other thing to highlight is that we've gotten, and particularly with the impacts of the Omicron variant in the last month, there are a number of new emerging concerns with businesses. So I was actually talking with the manager of Washington Square yesterday, and I was just checking in, as I do, kind of rounding by asking my questions about how things are going. And one of the things that came out of that, and I think this is reflective of what's going on in downtown Tigard as well, is that December and the holiday season was very strong, but January had a massive sort of drop in traffic and in sales. And so that is causing the council, actually at the meeting this week, after discussion, we directed staff to reassess where the needs are and to be prepared to offer an additional round of funding to support businesses that need it. All right, so we've got someone that is wishing everyone in the community and myself a happy Lunar New Year and Black History Month, and I will wish them a happy Lunar New Year and Black History Month back. Both very important and I think exciting times in our community. What other questions or comments do we have, Kent?
We're all caught up, but I think the audience would probably be interested in your Super Bowl prediction.
Oh, my Super Bowl prediction. Wow. Yeah, I'm sure they'd be really interested in that, Kent. So we got the Bengals and we got the Rams. And I think the Las Vegas odds makers seem to think the Rams are going to win. I think.
Correct.
I'll tell you what, I think Joe Burrow looked pretty good. I think the Bengals probably want it more. I actually think it's going to be a close game, and I think it will really kind of come down to who, I mean, this is maybe cliche, but both of those teams, I think, have had some propensity to make mistakes. So I think it's going to kind of come down to which team makes a lot fewer mistakes, both penalties and fumbles and things like that. So, all right, we got someone thanking us for doing the chats. I really enjoy these. This is actually, I really like this location. I don't know how much harder this was to set up, but it feels very homey because we're in a former home. We got the fire. So, Landers, what's Landers got to say?
He wanted to follow up and say he was the one who talked about debris on the bike lane. Yeah, he reports that Bonita on his commute was nicely swept. Huge thanks to the crews. The 3 other cyclists I passed there were also enjoying a smooth and safe ride.
Oh, good. Excellent. Good to hear that. Appreciate that. What else do you have for me, Tigard? I don't know what I'm competing with on TV tonight. Is there a Blazer game, or I know there's not a football game, but you got anything else? I don't want to take your whole night. I'll give you another 30 seconds to put your questions or comments in the chat. And then I will wish you all good night. Do we have anything coming in?
Just the police chief will be doing a virtual chat on February 22nd for folks who want to join that.
Oh, excellent. Okay. Police chief doing a virtual chat February 22nd. I did see that advertised. I didn't remember the date, but okay. So, who was the individual that had some of the police questions? Justin. So I think Justin, you might want to tune into that chat as well. You can text me and we can, or call me and we can talk as well, but that would be a good opportunity for you. And then I also want to plug the If I Were Mayor contest. This is something that I don't usually say I'm disappointed in our community, but I'm going to say I'm disappointed in our past participation while I've been mayor in the If I Were Mayor contest for students. So I'm going to plug that and suggest you go online, look for information about it, enter, and we do award money prizes for those. And then there are also money and other prizes awarded if they get forwarded to and picked as part of the Oregon Mayors Association annual conference. So if I would encourage all school-age children, there's different submissions for elementary, middle school, and high school, all age appropriate, and I would encourage everybody to participate in that. Leandro, is that what you were bringing up on your phone? Oh, wow. I could tell that just from an icon from this far away. Sometimes I surprise myself. Did anything else come in while I was berating the community about the If I Were Mayor contest? Please participate. Please. All right. Good night, Tigard. Thank you. We'll see you next month.